Commander Zeth Prime led Danny to a device that looked like a combination of a piano and a symphony orchestra made of light. The harmonic resonance generator was one of the Council's most sophisticated instruments, capable of creating music that expressed mathematical relationships across multiple dimensions. "This is how we create music in our civilization," Zeth Prime explained to Danny. "It translates mathematical concepts directly into harmonic frequencies." Danny looked at the strange instrument with wonder. Instead of keys, it had floating lights that responded to touch and thought. The surface seemed to shift and change as Danny approached it. "It's like a rainbow that sings," Danny said with delight. The council members watched nervously as Danny reached toward the instrument. The harmonic generator was so sensitive that even trained council musicians required years of study to use it properly. One wrong input could create feedback loops that might damage the ship's systems. But when Danny's small fingers touched the first light, something magical happened. The instrument responded to him as if it had been waiting for his touch. Gentle colors flowed across its surface and soft harmonies filled the chamber. Danny laughed with joy as he began to play. The alien instrument seemed to understand his musical thoughts even better than his old keyboard. As he played, the mathematics became visible. Patterns of light danced through the air, showing the numerical relationships that Danny heard in his mind. The council members watched in amazement as Danny created music that expressed concepts they had never seen before. The patterns he generated showed new ways to fold space, unknown methods of energy manipulation, and mathematical relationships that opened up entirely new branches of theoretical physics. "Impossible," whispered the mechanoid. "He's using the generator to express concepts that our databases don't even contain. Where are these ideas coming from?" Dr. Rivera smiled as he watched Danny play. "They're coming from the same place all of Danny's music comes from, his heart. He's not calculating these relationships. He's feeling them." The thought weaver's mental voice was filled with awe. The neural pathways required for this level of intuitive mathematics should not exist in any organic brain, yet the evidence is undeniable. Ambassador Velkiran turned to address the human delegation. "Dr. Chen, I believe it is time for the Council to make its decision regarding humanity's application for membership." Dr. Chen felt his heart racing. After everything they had witnessed, he still wasn't certain what the Council would decide. Zeth Prime stepped to the center of the chamber, his crystal form blazing with bright light. "Fellow council members, we came here today to evaluate humanity based on our traditional standards of cognitive achievement. By those standards, this species would have been rejected." Dr. Chen's heart sank. Were they still going to be turned away? "However," Zeth Prime continued, "this young human has taught us that our standards are incomplete. We have been measuring computational ability while ignoring other forms of intelligence that may be equally valuable." The energy dancer pulsed with agreement. "Danny has demonstrated cognitive capabilities that transcend our current understanding. He accesses mathematical truth through pathways that our science cannot explain." The mechanoid's voice carried new respect. "Agreed. The patterns he has generated contain solutions to problems that our greatest minds have struggled with for millennia. Yet he creates them through pure intuition." The thought weaver spoke with growing excitement. "More importantly, he has shown us that intelligence comes in forms we never considered. Humanity possesses gifts that could greatly benefit the Council." Danny finished playing and looked around at all the serious adult faces. "Did I play good on your space instrument?" Commander Zeth Prime knelt down beside Danny once again. "You played beautifully, Danny. In fact, you played so well that you've helped us make a very important decision." "What decision?" "We've decided that Earth and all the humans who live there are welcome to join our Council of Worlds." Danny's face lit up with excitement. "Really? We get to be friends with the space people?" "Yes, Danny. We get to be friends." Danny clapped his hands together and looked at his grandmother. "Grandma, did you hear? We're friends with the space people now." Rose Martinez was crying again, but these were tears of pure joy. Her grandson, the little boy that some people said would never amount to anything, had just secured humanity's place among the stars. Ambassador Valkyrin addressed Dr. Chen formally. The Galactic Council votes unanimously to welcome humanity into our alliance. But we do so with the understanding that your species brings unique gifts that complement our own abilities. What kinds of gifts? Dr. Chen asked. The gift of seeing truth through feeling, the energy dancer replied. The ability to solve problems through creativity rather than calculation. The wisdom that comes from emotional understanding rather than logical analysis. The Thought Weaver added, we have spent millennia trying to perfect intelligence through enhancement and optimization. But Danny has shown us that natural, unenhanced consciousness possesses capabilities that our technology cannot replicate. Mrs. Torres had been quiet during most of the formal proceedings, but now she spoke up. If I may say something, there are many children like Danny on Earth. Children with Down syndrome, autism, and other conditions that make them think differently. What you've seen today isn't unique to Danny. It represents a whole spectrum of human neurodiversity. Commander Zeth Prime's crystal form pulsed with understanding. You are telling us that humanity contains multiple forms of consciousness, each with its own gifts? Exactly, Dr. Rivera said. Danny represents just one example of how different types of minds can perceive reality in unique ways. Humanity's strength comes from our diversity of thought and experience. The council members exchanged glances, and Dr. Chen could see that this revelation excited them even more than Danny's individual performance. This changes everything, Valkyrin said. We have been seeking cognitive uniformity across the galaxy, but humanity suggests that diversity of thought may be more valuable than standardization. Over the following months, the Council established new protocols for evaluating species that measured creativity, emotional intelligence, and intuitive understanding alongside technical capability. Danny became an unofficial ambassador, traveling with his grandmother and Mrs. Torres to other worlds where his music helped establish connections between species that logic alone could not bridge. The first council facility built on Earth was established in Phoenix, Arizona, just a few miles from the community center where Danny had first played piano for Mrs. Torres. The building included a special music room where Danny could continue to explore the mathematical relationships he heard in his mind. Children from around the world came to visit the facility, especially those with developmental differences who had been told they weren't smart enough or capable enough to achieve great things. Danny's story showed them that intelligence comes in many forms, and that being different could be a gift rather than a limitation. Dr. Chen often visited the facility to watch Danny play for visiting alien dignitaries. Each performance revealed new mathematical concepts and opened up fresh avenues for scientific exploration. But more importantly, each performance reminded everyone present that true wisdom cannot be measured by tests or calculations alone. One evening, as Danny was practicing on the harmonic generator that the council had given him, his grandmother asked him if he understood what had happened that day on the alien ship. Danny thought for a moment, his small face serious with concentration. I think the space people learned that different doesn't mean wrong, he said. They learned that everyone is smart in their own way, just like Mrs. Torres always told me. Rose smiled and hugged her grandson. That's exactly right, sweetie. You taught the whole galaxy something very important. Danny smiled back and returned to his music, his fingers dancing across the lights as numbers danced in his mind and filled the universe with harmony. When Danny finished his thinking song, the chamber fell into a profound silence. But this time it wasn't the uncomfortable quiet of confusion or disappointment. This was the silence of beings who had just witnessed something that challenged everything. They thought they knew about intelligence and consciousness. Commander Zeth Prime moved slowly toward Danny's keyboard, his crystal form pulsing with gentle light. When he reached the small boy, he knelt down again, bringing himself to Danny's eye level. Danny, he said softly, do you know what you have? Just done? Danny shook his head, his brown eyes curious and innocent. I just played music. Did I do something wrong? No, child, you did something wonderful. You showed us that intelligence is much more than we ever imagined. The other council members were gathering around Danny now, their earlier hostility completely gone. The Thought Weaver's tentacles moved in gentle, flowing patterns that reminded Danny of underwater plants dancing in the current. In all our thousands of years of civilization, the thought weaver said, we have never encountered a mind that could perceive mathematical truth through pure feeling. You have shown us a new way to understand the universe. The mechanoid approached more carefully than the others, its sensors dim and respectful. Young human, my computational matrices have analyzed your musical expressions. They contain engineering, solutions that our greatest minds required centuries to develop. Yet you created them through instinct alone. Danny looked confused. I don't know what engineering means. I just play the music that the numbers want me to play. And that, said Ambassador Velkirin, is exactly what makes you extraordinary. Dr. Rivera felt tears streaming down his face as he watched the alien's reaction to Danny. Everything he had hoped for was coming true. The council was beginning to understand that intelligence couldn't be measured by their tests alone. Mrs. Torres stepped forward, her voice gentle but firm. This is what I've been trying to tell people for 2 years. Danny isn't limited by his Down syndrome. He's gifted because of how his mind works differently. He sees patterns and connections that the rest of us miss. Rose Martinez was crying too, but these were tears of joy and vindication. For 8 years she had watched people look at her grandson and see only his disability. Now, beings from across the galaxy were recognizing the beautiful mind she had always known existed beneath the surface. The energy dancer pulsed with warm, golden light as it addressed the human delegation. We owe your species an apology. We came here measuring intelligence by our own limited standards. We looked for logical computation and analytical reasoning. But true wisdom encompasses much more than calculation. Commander Zeth Prime stood and faced his fellow council members. Colleagues, we must acknowledge that our evaluation protocols are fundamentally flawed. We have been measuring only one type of intelligence while ignoring others that may be equally valuable or even superior. The thought weaver's mental voice carried a tone of profound realization. For millennia, we have sought cognitive perfection through enhancement and optimization. We have created beings with vast computational abilities and perfect logical reasoning. But in doing so, we may have lost something essential. What have we lost? Asked the mechanoid. The ability to perceive truth through feeling, to understand the universe through intuition rather than analysis. This child possesses something that all our enhancements and optimizations cannot create, the capacity to touch the fundamental harmony of existence through pure emotion. Danny had been listening to the aliens talk, and while he didn't understand the big words, he could sense that something important was happening. He looked up at his grandmother. Grandma, are the space people happy now? Rose smiled through her tears. Yes, sweetie, they're very happy. They learned something new today. What did they learn? They learned that being different doesn't mean being less than everyone else. They learned that your kind of smart is just as good as anyone else's kind of smart. Danny nodded seriously. Mrs. Torres always tells me that everyone is smart in their own way. Mrs. Torres reached over and gently ruffled Danny's hair. That's right, Danny. And today you showed these visitors from space just how smart you are. Ambassador Velkirin approached Dr. Chen. Dr. Chen, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must formally apologize for our narrow-minded approach to this evaluation. We nearly made a catastrophic error in judgment. What kind of error? Dr. Wei? Chen asked. We almost rejected humanity based on computational deficiencies while ignoring the profound cognitive gifts your species possesses. Danny has demonstrated that consciousness operates on levels we never considered measuring. Commander, Zeth Prime's crystal form brightened as he addressed the entire chamber. Let it be recorded that on this day, the Council's understanding of intelligence has been fundamentally transformed. We have learned that true wisdom cannot be measured by tests or calculations alone. The mechanoid's voice carried a new note of humility. Our automated assessment protocols classified this child as cognitively impaired. Yet he has solved theoretical problems that challenge our most advanced systems. We must completely revise our evaluation standards. Dr. Rivera stepped forward. Commander, if I may, I think Danny's gift represents something that might be common to humanity as a whole. We have always been a species that relies on intuition, creativity, and emotional intelligence alongside logical reasoning. Explain, Zeth Prime said. Our greatest discoveries often come not from pure calculation, but from leaps of imagination, from seeing patterns that logic alone cannot reveal. Our artists, musicians, and poets often express truths that our scientists spend years trying to prove mathematically. The energy dancer pulsed with understanding. You are saying that what we observed in Danny may represent a fundamental characteristic of human consciousness? Exactly. Different humans express it in different ways, but the capacity for intuitive understanding is part of what makes us human. The thought weaver's tentacles swayed with excitement. This suggests that humanity may possess cognitive capabilities that complement rather than compete with our own abilities. Instead of measuring you by our standards, we should be learning from your unique perspective. Danny had grown restless during all the adult conversation. He looked at the strange alien instruments surrounding him and had an idea. "Can I try to play music on one of your space instruments?" he asked. The council members looked at each other uncertainly. Their equipment was incredibly sophisticated and potentially dangerous if misused. But Commander Zeth Prime made a decision that would change the course of galactic history. "Yes, Danny, I think you should try." The silence in the testing chamber stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only seconds. Danny looked around at all the strange alien faces staring at him, waiting for someone to answer his question. When nobody said anything, he started to worry that maybe his music hadn't been good enough. "Was it okay?" he asked again, his voice smaller this time. Commander Zeth Prime was the first to move, the tall crystal being stepped forward slowly, as if he was afraid Danny might disappear if he moved too quickly. When he reached the small keyboard, Zeth Prime did something that shocked everyone in the chamber. He knelt down. "Young human," the commander said, his voice much softer than it had been before. That was the most beautiful expression of mathematical truth I have ever witnessed. Danny's face lit up with his brightest smile. "Really? You like the dancing numbers?" "The dancing numbers?" Zeth Prime's crystal form flickered with confusion. "That's what Danny calls the mathematical patterns he hears in music," Dr. Rivera explained. "He sees them as numbers that dance and want to go to certain places." The thought weaver drifted closer, its tentacles moving gently now instead of with agitation. When it spoke, its mental voice was filled with wonder. "Child, the patterns you created contain solutions to questions that have puzzled our greatest minds for thousands of years. How did you know to place those harmonic relationships in that precise sequence?" Danny tilted his head, thinking about the question. "I don't know what harmonic means. The music just tells me where the numbers want to go. If I put them in the wrong places, they sound sad. But when I put them in the right places, they're happy, and they make pretty sounds." Ambassador Velkiran approached the keyboard, moving, with the careful respect one might show to a priceless artifact. "Danny, may I ask you to play something else? Something that shows us how you hear these dancing numbers?" Danny nodded eagerly. "Okay, what kind of music do you want? Happy music, sleepy music, flying music?" "Flying music?" the energy dancer asked, its light form pulsing with curiosity. "Yeah, music that sounds like flying through the stars. That's my favorite kind." Danny placed his hands back on the keyboard and began to play what he called his flying music. This time, the melody started with patterns that sounded like movement through space. But as the music developed, it began to express concepts that made the alien scientists gasp with amazement. The mathematical relationships in this piece described faster-than-light travel, dimensional folding, and energy manipulation techniques that the Council had spent millennia perfecting. But Danny wasn't calculating these relationships. He was feeling them, expressing them through pure musical intuition. The mechanoid's sensors were working overtime trying to process what they were detecting. "Impossible," it said in its grinding voice. "The harmonic sequences contain complete engineering specifications for quantum tunnel navigation. No organic brain should be capable of intuitive grasp of such complex physics." Dr. Chen watched in amazement as the alien instruments lit up with readings that showed mathematical proofs, engineering solutions, and theoretical breakthroughs embedded in Danny's music. The boy was unconsciously solving problems that Earth's most advanced computers couldn't handle. Mrs. Torres had been quiet during most of the testing, but now she stepped forward. "If I may," she said to the council members, "I'd like you to understand something about Danny. Most people look at him and see only his limitations. They see Down syndrome and think that means he's not intelligent. But intelligence comes in many forms." She gestured toward Danny, who was still playing his flying music with complete joy and concentration. Danny experiences the world differently than most people. His brain processes information in ways that we don't fully understand. But that different way of thinking allows him to perceive patterns and relationships that others miss. The thought weaver's tentacles swayed thoughtfully. "You are suggesting that what we interpreted as cognitive deficiency is actually a different form of cognitive processing?" "Exactly," Dr. Rivera said. "Danny's Down syndrome doesn't limit his intelligence. It changes how his intelligence works. He processes mathematical relationships through intuition and emotion, rather than logical calculation. And as you can see, that allows him to access truths that pure logic cannot reach." Commander Zeth Prime was studying the readouts from his instruments with growing amazement. The complexity of the mathematical structures this child is generating exceeds anything we have seen from council members. Yet he appears to be creating them without conscious effort or training. "Because he's not trying to solve problems," Rose said. She had been watching her grandson with pride and love. "He's just playing music. The mathematics comes naturally to him because that's how his mind works." Danny finished his flying music and looked up at the aliens expectantly. "Did that one sound like flying to you?" The energy dancer pulsed brighter. "Yes, young one. It sounded exactly like flying, like soaring through dimensions and dancing with stars." Danny clapped his hands together with delight. "Yes, that's what I hear too. The numbers dance with the stars and they show me how to fly without a spaceship." Ambassador Velkirin turned to address the other council members. "Colleagues, we must reconsider our evaluation criteria. This human child has demonstrated cognitive abilities that transcend our standard measurements. He is accessing mathematical truths through pathways that our science does not recognize." The mechanoid's lights flashed rapidly as it processed this new information. "Agreed. The organic neural networks are operating in patterns that suggest quantum-level information processing. This is not deficiency. This is advancement beyond our current understanding." The thought weaver spoke with growing excitement. "If this represents the potential of human cognitive development, then this species may possess intellectual capabilities that exceed our own in certain areas." Danny had been listening to the adults talk, and while he didn't understand most of what they were saying, he could tell they were happy now instead of angry. That made him feel good. "Can I play more music?" he asked. "I know lots of songs. I know sleepy songs and happy songs and thinking songs." "Thinking songs?" Commander Zeth Prime asked. "Yeah, songs that help me think about big things, like how the moon goes around the earth and how the earth goes around the sun, and how everything is connected with invisible strings." The council members exchanged glances. This child was describing universal gravitational relationships through musical metaphor, demonstrating an intuitive understanding of cosmic mechanics that most beings required years of study to grasp. "Danny," Ambassador Velkirin said gently, "would you be willing to play one of your thinking songs for us?" Danny nodded enthusiastically and positioned his hands over the keyboard once again. "This one is about how everything in the universe talks to each other," he said. "Even though we can't hear them talking, they're always singing to each other." As Danny began to play his thinking song, the alien instruments detected mathematical descriptions of quantum entanglement, unified field theory, and dimensional interconnectedness that represented some of the most advanced physics in the galaxy. But, to Danny, it was just the music he heard when he looked up at the night sky and wondered about the stars. Danny sat on the small chair that Mrs. Torres had brought for him, his feet dangling a few inches above the floor. The keyboard looked tiny compared to the massive alien technology surrounding them, but Danny didn't notice any of that. He was focused on the keys, the same way he always was when he was about to play music. The council members were still making angry sounds about the humans presenting what they saw as a defective specimen. The Thought Weaver's tentacles were moving faster now, and the mechanoid's lights were flashing in patterns that clearly showed displeasure. "This is highly irregular," Commander Zeth Prime said, his crystal body glowing brighter with agitation. "Our bioscanners indicate severe neural development issues in this individual. The genetic markers are consistent with significant cognitive impairment." Dr. Rivera stepped forward. "Commander, we ask only that you listen. Give him 5 minutes to demonstrate his abilities before you make your final judgment." The energy. Dancer pulsed with what might have been curiosity. What possible ability could this damaged specimen possess that your superior individuals lacked? "The ability to perceive mathematical relationships through pure intuition," Dr. Rivera said. "The capacity to understand universal principles without calculation or analysis." Several council members made sounds that were clearly dismissive. Ambassador Valkyrin looked at Dr. Chen with something that might have been pity. "Dr. Chen, we appreciate your species' emotional attachment to your offspring, even the impaired ones. But sentiment has no place in cognitive evaluation. This display only confirms our assessment that humans lack the rational thinking necessary for advanced civilization." Danny had been listening to the adults talk, even though he didn't understand most of the big words they were using. He could tell the space people were upset, and that made him sad. He looked up at his grandmother. "Grandma, they sound angry. Should I not play music?" Rose knelt down beside her grandson's chair and took his small hand in hers. "Sweetie, these people have never heard music like yours before. They don't understand how special it is. But if you play for them, maybe they'll learn something new." Danny nodded seriously. "Okay, Grandma. I'll play the pretty music for them." Mrs. Torres had tears in her eyes as she watched Danny prepare to play. She had seen the joy and wonder that Danny's music brought to people at the community center. But these aliens seemed incapable of seeing past his disability to recognize his gift. "Danny," she said softly, "remember what we talked about. The music lives inside you, and you just let it come out through your fingers." Danny smiled at his music teacher. "I remember, Mrs. Torres. The numbers want to dance." He placed his hands on the keyboard and took a deep breath. The testing chamber fell completely silent. Even the humming of the alien instruments seemed to quiet down. Danny began with a simple melody that his grandmother had taught him when he was 5 years old. It was a lullaby that Rose used to sing to him when he couldn't sleep. The notes were pure and clear, floating through the chamber like drops of crystal water. But as Danny continued to play, something remarkable began to happen. The simple melody started to evolve and grow more complex. New harmonies appeared that seemed to come from nowhere. The rhythm shifted and changed in ways that created mathematical patterns in the air. Dr. Rivera watched the alien instruments begin to react to Danny's music. Lights started flashing on devices that had been silent during the previous tests. The council members' own biosensors were picking up something unexpected. The Thought Weaver's tentacles stopped their agitated movement and began to sway in rhythm with Danny's playing. The mechanoid's flashing lights synchronized with the musical patterns. Even Commander Zeth Prime's crystal body began to pulse in harmony with the melody. Danny was completely unaware of the effect his music was having on the aliens. He was lost in the joy of playing, his small fingers dancing across the keys as the numbers in his head showed him where each note belonged. The music was telling him a story about spinning stars and dancing planets, about the way light moved through space and how time flowed like a river. The mathematical relationships in Danny's music were becoming more complex by the minute. Dr. Rivera recognized Fibonacci sequences woven into the melody, golden ratios expressed through harmonic progressions, and patterns that corresponded to quantum field equations. But there was something else, something that made his scientific mind reel with amazement. Danny was expressing concepts that human science hadn't even discovered yet. The music contained mathematical descriptions of dimensional relationships, unified field theories, and particle interactions that wouldn't be understood by Earth's physicists for decades. Ambassador Valkyrin's silver form had gone completely still. The being's glowing blue eyes were fixed on Danny with an expression that might have been shock. The other council members were equally transfixed. The energy dancer was the first to speak, its voice filled with something that sounded like awe. Impossible. The harmonic frequencies contain solutions to theorem clusters that our greatest mathematicians spent millennia developing. The mechanoid's voice was tight with disbelief. My computational matrices are detecting proof structures for unified dimensional theory. These patterns should not be possible without advanced quantum processors. Danny continued to play, unaware that his music was solving mathematical problems that had puzzled galactic civilization for thousands of years. To him, it was just the pretty music that lived in his head, the dancing numbers that wanted to come out and play. The thought weaver's mental voice echoed through the chamber, filled with wonder. The neural patterns required to generate these mathematical relationships should be impossible for this organism's brain structure, yet the evidence is undeniable. Commander Zeth Prime's crystal body was now pulsing in perfect synchronization with Danny's music. The harmonic equations are expressing fundamental properties of space-time geometry. This is theoretical physics of the highest order. Dr. Chen felt tears running down his face as he watched the alien's amazement grow. Danny was doing exactly what Dr. Rivera had predicted, demonstrating a form of intelligence that went beyond anything the Council could measure with their tests. Rose Martinez didn't understand the scientific significance of what was happening, but she could see the wonder in the alien's eyes. Her grandson, the little boy that some people said was limited or damaged, was touching the hearts and minds of beings from across the galaxy. Mrs. Torres whispered a prayer of gratitude as she watched Danny play. She had always known he was special, but even she hadn't imagined that his gift could bridge the gap between worlds. Danny played for 27 minutes, his music growing more beautiful and mathematically complex with each passing moment. When he finally brought the piece to a gentle close, the testing chamber remained silent for a long time. Then Danny looked up at the assembled aliens with his bright, innocent smile and asked, "Did you like my music?" The testing chamber aboard the alien ship was unlike anything the human candidates had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of living crystal that pulsed with soft light. Strange instruments hummed quietly in the corners, and the air itself felt different, charged with an energy that made the human skin tingle. Commander Zeth Prime stood at the center of the chamber, surrounded by representatives from the 12 Council worlds. Each alien was more unusual than the last. The Thoughtweaver looked like a massive brain with tentacles that moved like underwater plants. The mechanoid delegate was a sleek robot with dozens of sensor arrays. The energy dancer appeared to be made of pure light that constantly shifted between different colors. Dr. Maria Lopez was the first human candidate to be tested. She approached the testing station with confidence, even though her hands were shaking slightly. The aliens had explained that she would need to solve a series of quantum physics problems that would demonstrate her understanding of multidimensional mathematics. The test began with what seemed like a simple equation projected in the air above her head. But as Dr. Lopez started working on it, the equation began to change and grow more complex. Soon she was dealing with calculations that involved 17 different dimensions and particle interactions that Earth science hadn't even discovered yet. Dr. Lopez was one of the smartest humans alive, but she found herself struggling. The math was unlike anything she had studied. She could solve parts of the problems, but the complete solutions seemed to require a type of thinking that her human brain wasn't designed for. After 30 minutes, Commander Zeth Prime called time. Dr. Lopez had completed only about 60% of the problems correctly. The alien's instruments showed that she had performed at the level of a Council species child. Insufficient, Zeth Prime announced. His crystal body dimmed with what might have been disappointment. Professor Jonathan Davis went next. His test involved pure mathematical reasoning, proving theorems and solving equations that the Council used as basic logic exercises. Davis was a mathematical genius who had solved problems that had puzzled human mathematicians for centuries. But the alien mathematics was based on concepts that humans had never encountered. Davis worked furiously, his mind racing through possibilities and proofs. He managed to solve some of the easier problems, but the advanced questions left him completely baffled. When his time was up, He had achieved only a 55% success rate. Insufficient, Zeth Prime repeated. Robert Kim faced the strategic thinking test. He sat across from a mechanoid intelligence that could process millions of possible moves per second. They played a game that was like chess, but with a three-dimensional board and pieces that could change their properties during play. Kim was the greatest chess player in human history, but this was beyond anything he had ever experienced. The mechanoid played with perfect precision, calculating every possible outcome 12 moves in advance. Kim lasted longer than anyone expected, using creative strategies that confused even the alien AI. But in the end, the mechanical intelligence's computational power was too much for him. Insufficient tactical ability, the mechanoid announced in a voice like grinding gears. Dr. Susan Wright's test involved theoretical physics and engineering. She was asked to design improvements to faster-than-light drive systems and to solve problems related to energy manipulation at the quantum level. Wright had designed some of humanity's most advanced spacecraft, but the alien technology was thousands of years ahead of anything humans had achieved. She tried her best, applying everything she knew about physics and engineering. But the concepts the aliens were using seemed to violate the laws of physics as humans understood them. When her test ended, she had managed to complete only 40% of the assigned tasks. Insufficient technical knowledge, declared the energy dancer, its light form flickering with what might have been pity. The council members looked at each other with expressions that clearly showed their disappointment. Ambassador Velkiran stepped forward to address the human delegation. Your species has demonstrated basic cognitive function, the silver alien said. However, you have not met the minimum standards for council membership. We must declare humanity unworthy of advanced civilization status. Dr. Chen felt his heart sink. Everything they had feared was coming true. Humanity's best minds weren't good enough for the galactic community. But then Dr. Rivera stood up. Ambassador, we request permission to present one additional candidate. Zeth Prime's crystal form flickered with what might have been irritation. You have already presented your finest specimens. What more could you possibly offer? We have one more individual who demonstrates a different type of intelligence, Dr. Rivera said carefully. Someone who approaches problems in a way that might surprise you. The council members exchanged glances. Several of them were clearly ready to end the testing and reject humanity entirely. But Ambassador Velkiran held up a hand. Very well, the silver being said. You may present this final candidate, but understand that this is your last opportunity. If this individual fails, humanity will be banned from council contact for a minimum of 1,000 Earth years. Dr. Chen nodded grimly. We understand the stakes. Dr. Rivera went to get Danny from the waiting area. The boy had been sitting quietly with his grandmother and Mrs. Torres, playing simple games to keep from getting bored. When Dr. Rivera explained it was his turn, Danny smiled brightly. Do I get to play music for the space people? He asked. Yes, Danny. You get to play music for the space people. Danny took his grandmother's hand as they walked toward the testing chamber. Rose was terrified, but trying not to show it. Her 8-year-old grandson was about to face beings who had just declared Earth's greatest minds insufficient. Mrs. Torres had brought Danny's favorite small keyboard, the one he practiced on at home. It wasn't much compared to the alien technology surrounding them, but it was familiar to Danny. As they entered the testing chamber, every alien eye focused on the small boy walking between his grandmother and his music teacher. The council's scanning instruments immediately detected Danny's genetic condition. The Thought Weaver's tentacles writhed in what was clearly agitation. The mechanoid sensors beeped rapidly as it processed the data about Danny's Down syndrome. Several council members began making sounds that were obviously protests. Commander Zeth Prime's crystal body flared with bright light as he turned to face Dr. Chen. What is the meaning of this? Your instruments must have detected this specimen's genetic deficiency. Are you mocking our evaluation process? Dr. Chen took a deep breath. Commander, we ask only that you give him the same chance you gave the others. Let him demonstrate what he can do. This individual's brain scans show significant developmental limitations, Valkyrin said coldly. By council standards, this specimen would be classified as mentally defective. Danny didn't understand most of what was being said, but he could tell the space people were upset. He looked up at his grandmother with worried eyes. "It's okay, sweetie," Rose whispered. "Just play your music like you always do." Danny nodded and sat down at his small keyboard. The testing chamber fell silent as the 8-year-old boy placed his hands on the familiar keys. None of the aliens knew they were about to witness something that would change their understanding of intelligence forever. Dr. Alex Rivera caught the first flight to Phoenix after seeing Carol Stevens' news report. He couldn't stop thinking about what he had witnessed in that brief television segment. As a musicologist who had spent years studying the mathematical relationships in music, he knew he had seen something extraordinary. The community center looked even smaller in person than it had on television. Dr. Rivera found Mrs. Torres setting up chairs for the afternoon music session. She looked surprised when he introduced himself and explained why he had come. "You flew all the way from Washington to hear Danny play?" she asked. "Mrs. Torres, I study the science of music for a living. What I saw in that news report was unlike anything I've encountered in 20 years of research. That boy is doing something that shouldn't be possible." Mrs. Torres smiled. "Danny is special, but not in the way most people think. Everyone sees his Down syndrome first. They don't see the beautiful mind underneath." When Danny arrived with his grandmother, Dr. Rivera was struck by how ordinary the boy seemed. Danny was small for his age, with the distinctive features that came with his genetic condition. He moved with the careful, deliberate steps that many children with Down syndrome used. But when he smiled, his whole face lit up with joy. "Danny, this man wants to hear you play piano," Mrs. Torres said. Danny looked at Dr. Rivera with curious eyes. "Do you like music?" he asked. "I love music," Dr. Rivera replied. "Would you play something for me?" Danny nodded and sat down at the old piano. He placed his small hands on the keys and began to play. Immediately, Dr. Rivera felt his breath catch in his throat. The music was even more remarkable in person than it had been on television. Danny started with a simple melody, but within minutes it had evolved into something incredibly complex. Dr. Rivera recognized patterns that related to advanced mathematical concepts, Fibonacci sequences, golden ratios, and harmonic relationships that most professional musicians never fully understood. But there was something else, something that made Dr. Rivera's scientific mind race with excitement. The mathematical patterns in Danny's music weren't just academically correct. They were expressing concepts from theoretical physics, quantum mechanics, and dimensional mathematics. "Danny," Dr. Rivera said when the boy finished playing, "where did you learn to arrange notes like that?" Danny tilted his head, thinking, "I don't know what arrange means. I just play what the music wants me to play." "Can you tell me what you hear when you play?" Danny's face scrunched up in concentration. "I hear numbers dancing. They have colors and they want to go to certain places. When I put them in the right places, they make pretty sounds." Dr. Rivera felt his heart racing. He pulled out his phone and called Dr. Chen in Washington. "Dr. Chen, this is Alex Rivera. I need you to listen to something." He held up the phone as Danny played another piece. "My God," Dr. Chen's voice came through the speaker. "What am I listening to? A 8-year-old boy with Down syndrome expressing quantum field equations through music," Dr. Rivera said. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then Dr. Chen spoke again, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you certain about this?" "I've spent my career studying mathematical music theory. This child is demonstrating an intuitive understanding of concepts that our greatest physicists struggle with. He's not calculating these relationships. He's feeling them. Bring him to Washington immediately." Rose Martinez was overwhelmed when Dr. Rivera explained what was happening. "You want to take Danny to meet aliens?" she asked. "Mrs. Martinez, your grandson might be humanity's best hope of passing the council's test. He's demonstrating a form of intelligence that goes beyond what they're measuring. But Danny has special needs. He's not like those other smart people you see on television. Dr. Rivera knelt down so he was at eye level with Rose. That's exactly why he might succeed where others fail. The aliens are looking for computational ability, logical reasoning, the kind of intelligence that works like a computer. But Danny's mind works differently. He's accessing mathematical truths through intuition and creativity. Mrs. Torres had been listening quietly. I've seen Danny play music that expresses emotions I didn't know existed. If Dr. Rivera thinks this could help people, maybe we should consider it. Danny had been playing piano while the adults talked. Now he stopped and looked at his grandmother. Grandma, are we going on an airplane? Rose smiled despite her worries. Danny loved airplanes. Would you like to go on an airplane, sweetie? Yes, can I bring my music? Of course you can bring your music. Dr. Rivera made arrangements for Danny and Rose to fly to Washington that evening. Mrs. Torres decided to come with them. Danny will need familiar faces around him, she said. On the flight to Washington, Dr. Rivera explained more about what was happening. The alien ship was waiting in orbit above Earth. Humanity's greatest minds were preparing to take tests that would determine whether the human race was worthy of joining the galactic community. What makes you think Danny can pass these tests? Rose asked. The aliens are measuring intelligence the way we measure it, through logic, computation, and analysis. But intelligence comes in many forms. Danny is demonstrating something that might be even more valuable: the ability to perceive fundamental truths about reality through pure intuition. Danny slept most of the way to Washington, his head resting on his grandmother's shoulder. Rose watched him sleep and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Her grandson had always been different, but she had never imagined his differences might save the world. Dr. Chen met them at the airport. He had arranged for Danny to stay at a secure facility where he could practice playing piano without distraction. The other candidates, Dr. Lopez, Professor Davis, Robert Kim, and Dr. Wright, were also staying at the facility preparing for their tests. When Dr. Chen first saw Danny, he felt a moment of doubt. The boy looked so young and fragile compared to the brilliant adults who would be representing humanity. But then Danny sat down at the piano in the facility's music room and began to play. Dr. Chen watched in amazement as Danny's music filled the room with mathematical beauty. The other candidates stopped their studying to listen. Even they could sense that something extraordinary was happening. How is this possible? Dr. Lopez whispered. I don't know, Dr. Chen replied. But I think we're about to find out if the aliens can recognize genius when it comes in an unexpected package. Danny finished his song and looked around at all the serious adults watching him. Did I play good? He asked. You played perfectly, Danny, Dr. Chen said. Just perfectly. The next morning, Ambassador Velkirin materialized in the White House Situation Room. The alien looked like a tall, thin person made of silver metal, with eyes that glowed like blue stars. President Hayes tried not to show how nervous she felt, as the being explained the Council's testing process. Every species that joins our alliance must prove their cognitive worth, Velkirin said in a voice that sounded like wind chimes. We have evaluated over 300 civilizations across the galaxy. Only 47 have met our standards. Dr. Chen leaned forward in his chair. What exactly do these tests measure? The alien's glowing eyes focused on him. Pure intellectual capacity, mathematical computation, strategic analysis, quantum mechanical understanding, and multidimensional problem solving. Your candidates will compete against the finest minds in the galaxy. Velkirin waved a hand, and the air above the table shimmered. Suddenly, holographic images appeared showing different alien beings. One looked like a giant brain with tentacles. Another was a robot with dozens of mechanical arms. A third appeared to be made of pure energy. These are examples of council species at their peak development, the ambassador explained. The thought weavers can perform calculations involving millions of variables simultaneously. The mechanoid collective processes information at quantum speeds. The energy dancers manipulate matter at the atomic level through pure mental focus. President Hayes felt her heart sink as she watched the demonstrations. The alien minds were solving problems that would take Earth's best computers weeks to figure out. and they were doing it in seconds. "How many candidates can we present?" she asked. "You may choose up to 5 specimens for evaluation. They will be tested in mathematics, logic, strategic thinking, and theoretical physics. The minimum passing score requires performance equal to our lowest-ranking member species." After the ambassador left, the room fell silent. General Clark was the first to speak. "We're in trouble. Even our smartest people can't compete with living computers." Dr. Chen was studying the data the aliens had provided. "Look at these neural capacity measurements. The average council member has brain processing power equivalent to our most advanced supercomputers. And that's just their baseline. We still have to try," President Hayes said. "Get me Dr. Maria Lopez from MIT. She's our best theoretical physicist. And Professor Jonathan Davis from Princeton. He's solved more mathematical proofs than anyone alive. We'll also need Robert Kim, the chess grandmaster, and Dr. Susan Wright from NASA." While the world's leaders scrambled to assemble humanity's intellectual champions, Danny Martinez was back at the community center with his grandmother. Word had spread about his amazing piano playing, and more people were coming to listen. Today, a local news reporter named Carol Stevens had come to see what all the excitement was about. She set up her camera as Danny sat down at the old piano. "This is Carol Stevens reporting from the Phoenix Community Center," she said into her microphone. "I'm here to see a young boy who local residents say has an extraordinary musical gift." Danny began to play, and immediately Carol knew she was witnessing something special. The music that flowed from the boy's fingers was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was complex and beautiful, with mathematical patterns that seemed to repeat and evolve in ways that made perfect sense even though she didn't understand why. Mrs. Torres watched from the side of the room. She had been thinking about Danny's playing all night. There was something about the way he arranged the notes that reminded her of the advanced music theory she had studied in college. But Danny had never learned music theory. He just played what he heard in his head. "Danny," she said during a break in his playing, "can you tell me how you know which notes to play?" Danny looked at her with his innocent brown eyes. "The numbers tell me, Mrs. Torres. The music has numbers in it and they show me where my fingers should go." Mrs. Torres felt a chill run down her spine. She had studied the mathematical relationships in music, but for Danny, it seemed to come naturally. He was seeing patterns that took most musicians years of training to understand. Rose Martinez noticed her grandson was getting tired. "We should go home now, sweetie," she said. As they were leaving, Carol Stevens approached them. "Mrs. Martinez, would it be okay if I shared this story on the news? What your grandson is doing is truly amazing." Rose hesitated. She was protective of Danny and didn't want him to become some kind of circus act, but she was also proud of his gift. "I suppose it would be okay," she said. "Maybe other people should see that children like Danny can do wonderful things too." That evening, Carol's story about Danny aired on the local news. Dr. Alex Rivera was eating dinner in his hotel room when he saw the report. Dr. Rivera was a musicologist who had been called to Washington to help analyze alien communication patterns. He nearly choked on his food when he heard Danny play. Dr. Rivera had spent his career studying the mathematical foundations of music. He recognized something in Danny's playing that most people would miss. The boy wasn't just making music. He was creating mathematical statements expressed through sound. Dr. Rivera immediately called his contact at the Pentagon. "You need to see this," he said. "There's a kid in Phoenix who might be exactly what we're looking for." Meanwhile, at the Pentagon, the team preparing for the alien tests was working around the clock. Dr. Maria Lopez was reviewing quantum physics problems that would have been impossible just a few years ago. Professor Davis was practicing mathematical computations that pushed his brain to its limits. "I don't know if we can do this," Dr. Lopez said during a late-night strategy session. "These aliens are operating on a completely different level than us. We have to believe in ourselves," said Dr. Wright. "Humans have always found ways to exceed expectations, but privately, each of the chosen candidates was beginning to doubt whether humanity was ready for this challenge. The aliens' demonstration had shown mental capabilities that seemed almost godlike compared to human intelligence. None of them knew that thousands of miles away, A little boy with Down syndrome was about to change everything they thought they knew about what it meant to be smart. The massive alien ship appeared at the edge of Earth's solar system on a Tuesday morning. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking his third cup of coffee when the alarm started screaming across the orbital station New Harmony. The ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built, stretching nearly 10 miles from end to end. Its surface looked like it was made from living crystal that pulsed with soft blue light. Jake ran to the command center where his crew was already working at their stations. Lieutenant Amy Parker was trying to make sense of the readings on her screen. The ship had just appeared without any warning, like someone had turned on a light switch in empty space. "Sir, we're getting signals from the vessel," Amy said. Her voice was shaking a little. "It looks like they want to talk." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. He had trained for this moment his whole career, but he never really believed it would happen. First contact with aliens was supposed to be something his grandchildren might see, not something happening on his watch. The main screen flickered and then showed the inside of the alien ship. A tall figure stepped forward. It looked like a person made of living crystal, with light flowing through its body like water. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English. "I am Commander Zeth Prime of the Crystalline Hegemony. I speak for the Galactic Council of 12 Worlds. We have come to evaluate your species for possible membership in our alliance." Jake took a deep breath. "I'm Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet. Welcome to our solar system, Commander. We're honored by your visit." The crystal being's face was hard to read, but Jake got the feeling it was not impressed. "Captain Morrison, your species has achieved basic space travel. This qualifies you for evaluation. However, membership in the Council requires proof of advanced cognitive development." Jake felt his stomach drop. "What kind of proof?" "Every species must demonstrate superior mental capacity through testing of their finest specimens. Your leaders will select candidates for evaluation within 72 Earth hours. Failure to meet our standards will result in your exclusion from galactic civilization until such time as your species evolves further." The screen went dark. Jake stared at the blank monitor for a long moment. Then he grabbed the emergency communication device and called Earth. President Linda Hayes was in a meeting about trade agreements when Jake's call came through. She listened to his report with growing concern. Within an hour, she had assembled her top advisors in the Situation Room deep beneath the White House. Dr. Peter Chen, her chief science advisor, was pacing back and forth. "This is exactly what we feared might happen," he said. "We always assumed that if we met aliens, they would be more advanced than us. But I never thought they would judge us like this." "What do we know about their standards?" President Hayes asked. Dr. Chen pulled up files on his tablet. "Based on Captain Morrison's report, they seem to value pure intelligence above everything else. Mathematical ability, problem solving, strategic thinking. The kinds of things we measure with IQ tests, but probably much more advanced." General Robert Clark spoke up from his seat at the table. "Who are our best candidates? Nobel Prize winners? Chess grandmasters? The people who designed our fastest computers?" "That's just the problem," Dr. Chen said. "If these aliens are as advanced as their ship suggests, even our smartest people might look primitive to them. It's like asking a kindergarten student to compete with a college professor." President Hayes felt the weight of the entire human race on her shoulders. "We have to try. Get me a list of our most brilliant minds, scientists, mathematicians, anyone who might impress them." While the world's leaders worked frantically to prepare for the test, life continued normally for most people on Earth. In Phoenix, Arizona, 8-year-old Danny Martinez was having breakfast with his grandmother Rose. Danny had Down syndrome, which meant he learned things differently than other children. But Rose had always believed Danny was special in his own way. "Grandma, can we go to the music place today?" Danny asked. He loved going to the community center where Mrs. Helen Torres taught piano lessons. "Of course, sweetie," Rose said. She had been taking Danny to music therapy for 2 years now. It was one of the few activities that really made him happy. The community center was a small building that had seen better days. The piano in the main room was old and some of the keys stuck, but it still made beautiful music. Mrs. Torres was a retired music teacher who volunteered her time to help children like Danny. "Good morning, Danny," Mrs. Torres said when they arrived. "Are you ready to play today?" Danny nodded eagerly and sat down at the piano bench. His small fingers found the keys and he began to play a simple song that Mrs. Torres had taught him. But as he played, something interesting happened. Danny started to change the melody, adding notes that weren't in the original song. Mrs. Torres watched in amazement as Danny played music that was far more complex than anything she had taught him. The melodies seemed to flow from his mind directly to his fingers. Other people in the community center stopped what they were doing to listen. When Danny finished, the room was quiet for a moment. Then everyone started clapping. Danny smiled his bright, innocent smile and looked at his grandmother. "That was beautiful, Danny," Rose said. She had tears in her eyes. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Danny shrugged. "The music tells me what to do, Grandma. I just listened to it." Mrs. Torres pulled Rose aside. "I've been teaching piano for 40 years, she whispered. "I've never seen anything like what Danny just did. He's not just playing music. He's creating it, like he understands something about it that the rest of us don't." Rose looked at her grandson, who was now playing another song, this one even more beautiful than the first. She didn't understand what was happening, but she knew it was something special. Far above them, in the cold vacuum of space, the alien ship waited patiently for humanity to present its champions. Commander Zeth Prime and the other council members had no idea that the most important demonstration of human potential was happening at that very moment in a small community center, played by a little boy who just loved to make music.